Thinking about Donald Trump and how all these things happen every day, in his mind, who is he in his own story?
That's a great question. I actually think that there's a few things he believes. One is that he believes he's a great person. Consciously, he believes that he really is the best president we've ever had, and that everything done has been great, and the economy and everything. So he has that belief about himself, and at the same time, he's fragile. So whenever somebody criticizes him, that belief gets challenged, and he has to reassert it, always, with tweets, with TV shows, with everything. So that's his basic belief and his need to reassert himself. Unconsciously, that belief is based on a compensatory fantasy of greatness that compensates for loss in early childhood, which was the loss of a maternal attention when he was little, and a lot of that in my book about his mother and him, and that he compensated by having a vision of him being the greatest person who could do whatever he wanted to do. And so that's the first thing. Second thing he believes about himself is he believes he's a victim, and he believes that people are out to get him and criticize him. And he's always had the need for an enemy or an adversary or somebody who's out to get him. And right now, and for a long time, it's been the press. He's been angry at the press way before he ever became president. And since he's president, he started this fake news thing. And one of the things about that he believes about himself is that he's a victim, that people are out to get him, that he's being treated unfairly. He gave a graduation speech at the Air Force Academy and talked about how he's been more victimized than any other president in history. It's really quite stunning to read that speech or to hear him give it.
Does he actually believe it? Use the word delusion. We talk about his malignant narcissism, all the various terms that clinicians have applied to him based on his public behavior. Does he really believe it, or deep inside, does he not believe it?
I think he really believes it. I think that people who ask this question, there is a confusion, not a confusion on your part necessarily, but people have a confusion between the word really and only. He may have another belief also to some extent, but really doesn't mean only. Really means he truly believes it. He may have other beliefs. His belief system is such that it's segmented, like when a baby is crying and you look at it and you're there wanting to comfort it, that baby, you have the feeling, has never felt that it could laugh or be happy. It's not part of their mind. They're only in the moment. And that's a normal state for babies. As we grow up, even by the time we're 2, we realize we can have more than one mood and memory and all those things. But Trump is amazing in that he's still a segmented thinker. So that's why when somebody asks him what he meant by a tweet the day before, I don't know if you remember, Dickerson did that in a TV thing a while ago. When somebody asks him what he did the day before and reads, or even that day, and he reads the tweet to him, he can't answer the question because he doesn't know what he meant. That's how segmented he is. So yes, he really believes it, but I don't think he only believes it.
I mean, that's a really, really powerful intervention. And thinking, obviously, so many folks have made their diagnoses based on his public behavior. All these folks throwing up rules about diagnosing from afar, but we got so much evidence on this man just from his public behavior.
What I wanted to say about that is very important, and that is that when the Goldwater rule was passed and about not making diagnoses from afar, that was passed in 1964. There was no internet. There was not even Senate hearings were not televised. There was no tweeting. There was no daily interviews and 24/7 news cycle. I mean, there's a lot of public information. We didn't know that much about Goldwater. There was a book written that he wrote called The Conscience of a Conservative. There were people writing about him, and he gave some speeches and did talk about America, love it or leave it. I mean, there were things he said that were pretty scary. But those days are long gone. And my analysis is not an armchair analysis. I've been researching this for a year and a half or 2 years. It's the most thorough analysis I could ever do of someone without having them in my consulting room. And if I interviewed him, I would have to see him a lot to get to this level, because one interview wouldn't do anything.
What would you explain to the general public about his behavior? What are we actually seeing in terms of pathology?
There's certain things that are very important. One is that we can tell you a narrative, and that is that the story that's very famous is how he took the building blocks when he was a kid from his brother. He was about 6 or 7 or 8, maybe he was 8. His little brother was 6. They were both building towers, and he didn't have enough building blocks, so he asked his brother for them, and he took them from him. But then when he took them, he glued them together, so they could never be reused, and he'd never have to give them back to his brother. That's who Trump is. They then suddenly belong only to him. That's the truth about Trump. So I think that story is very predictive of a quality that he has. So the takeaway from this book is, first of all, that he can't change. It's not only that he won't change. He is Donald Trump. He is not able to change. It's not that he won't. He can't. And people need to recognize that, because the people who are anti-Trump need to understand that they have to stop getting exasperated by him and go ahead and move forward. And the people who are moving forward are women and minorities who are running for office, people who are speaking out, but other people are not moving forward. I think people on the right might enjoy this book too, because it gives them tools to think about who they elected and the fact that they really do like him. There's a lot of things they admire about him. And I think that it's important even for them, or especially for them, to understand who he is, and they can then deal with it. They don't have to say we don't like him. They may say he's got this and that, and we need to think about it and pay attention. Like, they do know that he's suspicious. They do know that he sees himself as a victim. They do know that he's compulsively lies. If they can accept that and understand that, it might help them think about his leadership and what he's doing, not necessarily to turn against him, but to have a better understanding. In other words, the purpose of my book is to deepen people's understanding of who he is.
And, we're having a moment of kismet there. I was one of the first people on national TV to predict that Trump was going to win.
Yes, I did the same thing.
And I don't know why they were in such denial, and you're reading each other's minds. And I said, he's not going to change. This is who the man is. Why do you think so many folks still think that this is a facade, a charade, that somehow he'll mature? I was like, this is who the man is.
Because people have a failure, everybody, to some extent, all of us. When we were children, we didn't want to see our parents as anything other than great when we were very little. We also believed in Santa Claus. Some of us even believed in the Easter Bunny. I think that there's all kinds of things that little children believe in, that they idealize, that they love. People believe in the presidency. People believe in the United States and its being a great nation. People believe in our institutions. And people, even Anne Frank, when she was about to be murdered by the Germans, ended her little book by saying people are basically good at heart. I think people believe that. So I think that people felt that once Trump could see the importance of what it means to be president and the awesome responsibility that goes with it, that he could change. And we can say that in retrospect, that that's naive and that's based on hope, but it's also based on a childhood confidence about the institution and a childhood confidence that people can see things. And I think that it's very painful to get disillusioned.
So here's a hypothesis I have, and you can correct me, make an intervention if you would. I think that obviously there's a very dangerous intersection with collective narcissism going on between Trump's public, and never mind the racism, the xenophobia, the bigotry. That's a reflection of collective narcissism, and Trump is tapped into that. But I also think there's something I think a lot of folks are afraid to say, that, quote unquote, respectable news media types. I think Trump's election is also symbolic and emblematic of some sort of collective infantilizing. I think there are a lot of folks who are attracted, himself included. I think he's very infant-like. That something's going on with people's maturity, with, you said, their denial, their hopes and dreams. Do you think that's an overread?
I don't think that's an overread, but I think that it's not an adequate read, but it's a good read. First of all, why are people narcissistic? What makes people collectively narcissistic? Rather than defining them, what about looking deeper in terms of what the causes are? And in most people, in my experience, the causes of intense narcissism have to do with the need for survival and the need to have a fantasy that compensates for hurts, frustrations, feeling helpless, feeling that you can't tie your own shoes. I don't want any help from you, Mommy. It's a sense of narcissism that is a natural state. So when a neighbor of mine met Bill Clinton when she was about 6 and he was president, I was there, he picks up this girl and holds her up and puts her down. And I said to her, do you know who that was? She said, yes. But how did he know who I was? That's narcissism. It's normal. I think that what's happened is that Trump taps into the compensatory part of narcissism, and that is that the people he talks to who've lost their jobs, who've worked hard, who've been churchgoers and all these other things and haven't gotten very far, feel hurt, rejected, and they don't have a part of the American dream. They're left behind the way a 5-year-old is left behind when the parents go out to the movies. So they're injured and they feel upset and they feel like, how could you do this to me? And that's Trump. That's the narcissistic injury. So Trump says, how could you do this to me? I won't take it anymore. And he connects to people.
Because he's very infant-like, in my opinion, based on his behavior. And I think his public is very infant-like in terms of their attraction to him.
Well, I think that there's two parts of that. One is that there's an attraction because you see it as infant-like. I may do that too. But that's a defensive perception on your part because infants feel that they can say whatever they want and do whatever they want. And that's what narcissists. And there's nobody more infant than a narcissist. I cry and the breast comes to me. I get cold and I get my diaper changed. I'm this and look what happens. They're very powerful in their fantasy life. It comes as a shock when they look in the mirror and say, oh my God, I'm just a little baby. Or inside, I'm just, whatever it is. There's a real disconnect. And I do think that people are aware of their infantile nature. One of the things that infants want to do when they're older is they want somebody to make it safe and tell them what to do. And I think that people are longing for a leader who will take charge. And I really think that that's what they like about Trump because they feel that he'll take charge. So they're infants not. The other side of it is that he's an infant, and then we become like parents, and we get attracted to somebody we can save and help. There's a reverberation of who's got the baby. That's how I see it.
I mean, that's such a sharp analysis to think about that reversal in terms of responsibility, because you have a president who's supposed to be a caretaker, never mind his formal roles, chief executive, informal national cheerleader, but you have a president who seems infant-like. And what does that do to the public's perceptions of the office and our need maybe for some to protect him, to be defensive?
Well, one of the things that he does is that he abdicates responsibility. So by doing that, he evacuates it. So he makes everyone else around him feel responsible for him. So that makes us into the parents and him into the infant. And I said that, and also in an interview right after he was elected, that he was going to be a president for the first time who we had to comfort rather than who had to comfort us. And that's a shocking state of affairs because that's not why we have presidents and it's not what we think we need. And yet at the same time, we now have a president who we feel we have to comfort, and he can't comfort us because he doesn't know how, because he can't empathize.